Have you always wanted to use soft pastels before but always been confused about how to use them? Have you used soft pastels before but when you blend them found that they become muddy? In today's clip, I'm going to talk you through a variety of techniques that I use in my soft pastel work, and I'll also talk you through the resources that I use in producing that soft pastel work. So let's get on with the clip. So when you are using soft pastels, you need to think very carefully about the paper. It needs to be a paper that has a texture. So you could, for example, use watercolor paper or a thicker cartridge paper, or what we call construction or sugar paper, which sometimes has a color to it. For today, I am going to be using Canson Mitente paper. The reason I like to use that is because it's got a honeycomb texture to it. It's 160 GSM, and I'm going to be doing some work with liquids later, and it will take that liquid. So that is why I'm going to be using this paper today. If you would like to find out more about the soft pastels that I'm using in today's demonstration, you can also look in the description below, and you will find out information there about all of the resources that I have used in today's clip. For these first 4 blocks, I'm going to be doing a combination of blending and layering, because very often I have students asking me, why is their work muddy or dull? And very often that is because they have over blended their marks. Now I'm also going to talk to you about side stroke, which is when you use your pastel on the side, which is what I've just done here. Now this first one, I am using the side stroke, and I have blended that first layer with my pen, with my finger. You probably couldn't see it, I think it's been cut out, but I did blend that with my finger. The second layer I have just added it on top, and already you can see it is much brighter. When you don't blend the work in with your finger, it does appear much brighter. So those of you that are struggling with your work becoming muddy or those dull colours, it's because you are over blending, because what it does is it crushes the particles together. So try not to over blend a little bit but not too much. And I'm doing the same comparison here but with a darker and a lighter tone. So I've chosen that really dark lovely purple over there, and then I'm putting the lighter colour on top, just brushing the excess away, just so you can see that lighter colour on top. Now obviously you can see the tooth of the paper underneath. For this next technique, I'm still using the side of the pastel, but I'm using shorter strokes now to create a dappled effect, because I'm trying to create the effect of broken colour, so it's a more interesting and broken up technique. And I'm laying down the lighter colour first, and then I'm putting the darker colour on afterwards, and I'm going to try and mix those colours in between, and I may go on with the lighter colour on top just to make sure and smudge those colours in between. This next technique is one that you've probably used before if you draw. So it's just crisscrossing, cross-hatching your first layer. You can blend that and then add a lighter layer on top to add more interest. And then hatching is just one diagonal layer. And again, if you wanted to blend that and add a lighter layer on top for more effect, you can do. So here is an alternative way of using your oil pastels, especially if they're ones that create a lot of dust. And that is to just take the dust directly off of the soft pastel. You can use a blade, some scissors, or a grater, or you can even use your nail if you have sharp nails. You can also use this technique to put a variety of different colours, and then you need to put a plastic wallet, or if you've got wax paper or freezer paper, and then what you can do is you can put some pressure on top with a rolling pin or some other heavy object, and then that will keep that pastel onto the surface. It does work more effectively on darker areas, and it's good for things like snow and for water effects. So now we're going to talk about scumbling, which is another technique which just provides a different kind of interest and a different surface, a softer feel. So essentially you're going to do a doodle, and I would usually choose a darker colour underneath, but you can also do this in reverse to create a different effect. And then you choose the contrasting colour, or it could be a lighter colour, to go over the top, and just fill in those areas and create a different effect. Next technique is called feathering, and this is very similar to hatching because you are using diagonal marks all in one direction, but this time you are picking out a shape or form, and you are using different colours around that shape to make that shape look more 3D or to make it come to life. So I am using all of the different colours and shading in the same direction to make that shape come to life, and in this instance it's a cup. You could of course use this for any type of image, but this is especially good for animals because of the texture. So the next technique that I'm going to look at is Pointillism or Stippling, and this is a technique of making dots to create a colour or an area of colour, and you can have these as close or as wide apart as possible, and you may want to use your background colour paper to help you with the colour. And also you can have the dots as large or as small as each other. So say for example you're using two colours together, you may want to use the dots for one colour smaller and one colour larger to help one colour dominate each other. So I'm putting these dots quite close together. However, as I said, you can have them wide apart. It depends what colour effect you are trying to create. And I'm now putting the lighter green on top and blending some of these greens together, some of the darker greens underneath together with that stippling technique. If you use a kneadable putty rubber, Soft Pastel is actually quite easy to erase. So I have here a Winsor & Newton soft putty rubber, and if you look in the top left hand corner, I'm now going to erase some lines out of the blended corners that I did earlier. So now we're going to look at adding water to Soft Pastels, and this is very straightforward. You can layer your pastels however you like and then add water to it. You may have heard of a technique called underpainting, where you add soft pastels, then you add water on top. This is probably a little bit too much water, but I'm used to doing a lot of wet on wet, so I maybe got a bit too zealous with my water there. And then what you do is you wait for your water to dry. This is alcohol. So I've got some alcohol and added that to the soft pastel. This has quite a different technique and it reacts to the soft pastel in a different way. It makes the finish a little bit richer, as you can see. And I've added this to the feathering technique that I did earlier. And as you can see, the results are slightly different. Obviously, it's not one flat colour. You've got a variety of colours here, but you can use alcohol. If you don't have sort of artistic alcohol or chemical alcohol, you can actually use vodka. I ran out of alcohol, so I used a little bit of vodka here, and that's perfectly fine. So that can also be used. If you enjoyed this clip, then make sure you check out more clips like this in the Pastels playlist. Don't forget to look in the description below for details of products used in today's clip. And if you have any ideas for future content, leave a comment below. Finally, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified of future content.